had me at Jello, Jello. You had me at Jello. You had me at Jello. Oh, you had me at Jello. Hi, everybody. 5 o'clock on a Friday again. Time to press pause on whatever you were doing before. I know I like to spend this time and just go kind of, it can be outside of what you've normally been thinking or doing, and just get to know another cellist and their background with the cello, what inspires them, their approach to inspiring their students. It's fun. I hope you have even half as much fun as I do. This week, my guest is Carina Voly, and I'm thrilled to have her on the program, as it were. Carina, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Benjamin?
I'm doing really very well, thank you. And now for our viewers, can you tell your musical background and how you got where you are today?
Sure. So I'm a cellist, obviously, and I started actually quite late in life. Music was always a very important part of my life. My parents are not musicians, but since very, very, very early in life, they were playing classical music. I remember even my dad telling me stories about why or how this music was composed. Going in his car to school, he would turn the radio on and would ask us to imagine something that was going on while the music was playing, what story was going on. And I probably was 5-6 years old. I still remember that so fondly. And so it was always a very music-oriented environment, although not music performing. However, I started at 5 years old, I did start to play guitar. My mom was taking lessons, and I would sit patiently. I don't remember this. This is what she tells me. And my mom was struggling with trying to play chords in the guitar until maybe a few months into her lessons, she found me with her guitar playing very easily whatever she had been learning, which is years later thinking about this is very much the Suzuki approach to learning the mother tongue, of hearing a parent. So I got guitar lessons after that, and growing up in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So this is something that pretty much everybody I know can play at least a little bit of guitar, but then you sing. It's a culture that has a lot of singing, and so I played and learned a lot of Argentine folklore music, and then South American folklore music. And I was always passionate about something music related and singing. And at 15 years old, I actually played the electric guitar for a little bit. I wanted to play rock, American, British rock of the 70s, 80s maybe. And I was playing also recorder, early music. It was such a splash of all over the map of things that I was interested in. And thinking that I was going to actually be a teacher of English as a second language until music was so flowing my whole life that I realized that probably this is something that I really feel passionate about. And what can we do? I was singing in a choir. I was taking classes for music theory, composition, all kinds of things. And then I thought maybe choir conducting, and the choir conductor had started to study orchestra conducting, and he was kind of a hero. So I thought, orchestra conducting, and he said, you need to play an orchestra in an orchestra before you get into conducting. By this time, I was already 18 years old, mind you. And so I thought percussion, woodwinds, brass, wind instruments. I had recorder. I had a little bit of introduction to the percussion, but the bowed instruments that sit in front of the orchestra were totally foreign to me. And so violin and viola seemed very uncomfortable, and the bass was too big. And I thought, whatever, cello, let's do cello for a little bit, and then I'll get into conducting, And I tend to say sometimes that the cello actually chose me, because as soon as I got a cello in my hands, all the rest was totally forgotten forever. And so there it is. I had quite a late start in Buenos Aires, in a country that was in the middle of a military dictatorship. And where all the universities, conservatories, places where people could learn to think were being closed. And so all my music friends were leaving. Conservatory had very few. The teacher had a fantastic Russian teacher. He was really very caring and whatnot, but my lessons were 15 minutes long. We had to share a full hour with 4 students. So it was very difficult to actually learn. And I got a fantastic scholarship to study in Israel. And so I applied. It's kind of a miracle that I got into this university, because at 23, 24 years old, having started so late with the cello, it was really, I'm really thankful that I was accepted, and I really had a wonderful experience in Jerusalem. After which I thought I was going back to Argentina. I never did. I mean, just to visit. And I ended up, looking for scholarships, places where I could go do a master's degree. And I came to the US and started my master's degree in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. And halfway through that first year, I met Uri Vardi, cello teacher extraordinaire, who I know that you're familiar with. And long story short, I ended up moving to Madison, Wisconsin, and I finished my master's degree there and stayed for the next 20 years in Madison, developing a beautiful cello studio. I became very involved with the youth orchestra in Madison, and ended up directing the chamber music program for them. So it was a really great thing. So that was my Wisconsin part of my life, which continued on and on, always looking for different opportunities, different things. It so also happened that my family all lived in Miami, Florida, actually. And so I was very fortunate to apply and get a job as director of community engagement with the New World Symphony under Michael Tilson Thomas, which was just an incredible experience to see all these things happening, being surrounded by fellows. It's a orchestral training academy, fellows that are from the top universities and programs around the country, around the world. And being taught how to be a good orchestral musician and how to get into those big orchestras. My job was more to get them familiar with community engagement activities. But I had stopped teaching pretty much at that point. So 3 years of that. With the words of Marvin Rabin, that always kept telling me, a fabulous educator, for those of you who are not familiar with who he is or who he was, such an inspiration. And I would have to call him and give him weekly reports at the time of what I was doing. And our conversation always ended up, Carina, you can't stop teaching. He was right. He was very right. And so that was part of my inspiration, and I was also very fortunate. There was an opening for a program directorship in one of the local youth orchestras here in San Diego, which I thought would be something that would allow me to teach. So I moved to San Diego, and I tried for a whole year to teach and direct this program. Not a good match. Any administrative job with such a big organization, it didn't allow me enough time for teaching. And so after 1 year, I was also very fortunate. I always say I have a guardian angel or something that guides my life with the cello and with teaching and with music. I met my now colleague and friend, Travis Merrill, who's the viola professor at the University of San Diego, San Diego State University, sorry. And we have a very similar approach to teaching, similar ideas. And he had been wanting to create a string academy, very much in the model of Mimi Zweig's String Academy in Bloomington, Indiana. The rest is history. It's been 9 years now. We grew our program from 15, 20 students that we had between the two of us at the beginning to about 100 these days. All kinds of instruments, string academy, co-curricular program with the San Diego State University, both performance and music education students. So performing a lot less these days, because I'm teaching, I'm helping, develop all these programs. But I'm getting there, finding the right balance of things to do. But I'm teaching. I have my studio at this moment has 24. I have 24 wonderful cello students, ages 5 through 18. Nice. Actually, I have a couple of adults too in the midst. So there you go. A little long, but there. That's the gist of it.
That's excellent. I mean, what a breadth of musical background in terms of not only the instruments early exposure, and then the different countries and then parts of America. I mean, it's wow. That is a lot. And you have I remember when you were in Wisconsin, for example, you always had a cello studio with a very good track record of great students, great track record of solid students. And so for this next question, I'm very curious to hear what your approach is when you find a student that, I mean, there are a fair number of students that maybe whether they feel like their love of music is just fine, but other things call them instead of the cello, and they don't end up practicing and achieving as much as they could if they were to practice. What do you do to kind of light that particular fire and show them just how much they can achieve?
So there's a couple of things that go into the mix of this. The first thing that I need to make sure is that this is something that the kids are doing because they want to be in a private lesson with cello. And sometimes, motivation I find is so different. The one that I feel less happy about is when students take cello lessons because it will look good in their transcripts. And so that's kind of a killer of any kind of motivation, because if you don't like to play, if you don't understand what this gives you, it makes it very difficult. I think part of the success is, as some wise person I once read that said, is 80% who you are and 20% of your knowledge or your ability to put into practice these things. So I think that having an outgoing personality and an engaging personality is part of the success, part of the importance of things, to make a very personal connection with my students is another important thing. Building a community where my students, in Wisconsin, I do this also here. I really enjoy having my students meet each other, support each other, find things that are common to them, join local youth orchestras, find other things that rather than just practicing your cello alone. I'm a firm believer in working with colleagues in the community. You have been one of the awesome colleagues that have taught masterclasses for my students when I was in Madison. amongst many other, Mr. Vardi, Carl Levine, as much as I could, I involved all my friends and colleagues to build, the community, that community, not just of students, but also of teachers, having recitals often where the kids can perform their pieces that they're learning. So there's a lot of, all these things are great motivators, maybe sometimes indirectly, because you practice more when you have to perform and you have to polish. And what I was very happy since I came to San Diego is the ability of having weekly group classes where we reinforce a material that has been happening during the week in private lessons. Students play for each other. That we have an accompanist on staff that will play with the kids, so they have the ability of playing with the pianist, not just a 15-minute rehearsals and a concert. So there's a lot of things that sort of build that motivation. Conversations with students and conversations with parents, where I explain, all these byproducts of taking music lessons, which I really think it's very important to understand. I do not expect, and I don't want actually, to have all my students be music majors, performance majors when they go to college. It's a difficult profession. You have to have a vocation. You have to understand also that orchestra jobs are not always available. So there's a lot of other activities that you can do as a musician, as a performance major even. But regardless of that, it's the attention to detail, the attention to the disposition of the commitment of starting an activity and finishing it, of understanding how do you find a problem. This is one of the very important things that I always tell my students. This is important for cello, but it's also a good life coaching thing. You need to know what your problem is if you need to solve it. So if your problem is a shift between two notes, which are your two notes that you're struggling with? And so if you know what the problem is, then we can find a solution or try to find a solution, different tactics to fix it. And I really think that these are life skills. The ability to express your feelings, to say what you think about stuff. I remember I had it was not very long ago, one of my students was doing her first communion, and the father came back and told me that he was incredibly impressed that this kid who's very shy, the priest asked who wanted to say some words for the whole community, and she stepped up and she spoke very nicely in front of everybody. And I said, that's what your cello lessons have given you, because the comfort of playing an instrument in front of an audience really prepares you for an interview, for a speech that you are going to be doing in the future. So these are some of the examples in which I really think that it's incredibly important to understand all these byproducts of things that we learn. Attention to detail. That's one of the most incredible, very important ones, that we get. We have to pay attention. What are we doing? What style is this music? Listen to a lot of music. Let's go to concerts. I just had a group of 10 of my students that we attended a concert with a cellist that was coming through town, and we got to go to the concert. After the concert, I ask everybody knows that they have to tell me what they liked, what they thought, what they would like to do. Is there any piece that you would like to learn or to learn more about it? So it's not just about sitting and playing notes there. That's one of the another one of the motivators of like, oh yeah, this is part of what I want to do. A funny story, one of my students, this was a while back, I think I was still in Madison, we went to listen to Yo-Yo Ma, and this 6-year-old kid told me he did not have cello feet.
That's precious.
That was lovely. She was paying attention to all these things, and of course, I told her, when you get to be as good as your man, you can do whatever you want. So
he doesn't. He really doesn't. I hadn't thought of that. That's very funny. I love this. I love one of the things I definitely want to will share with the audience as well is your on your website. You have a teaching philosophy page, which is excellent. I love all the bullet points. And then when you talk about these byproducts, I really like that. I don't see that in too many teaching philosophies, but I think it kind of reflects your breadth of your musical background in terms of also your breadth of thinking about these various skills and how they tie in with other aspects of life or of thinking or of approach of problem solving or these sorts of things. So I really enjoyed that. And then your comment about the attention to detail is one that has not been highlighted much by other people on this series. And it's another very good point in that so often when we are victim of our own bad habits, it's because we have these blind spots, and our brain kind of fills in, well, either you hear what you intended to hear in your brain and you didn't actually hear what came out of your instrument or whatever the case is, or you're unaware that you're doing a particular motion a particular way. And to kind of put on that Sherlock Holmes hat for those details will help make those sorts of, if they help you catch those problems when they're kind of incipient and you can still do something about them relatively easily rather than once they're entrenched and it's so much work to.
That's true. But there's also another very important component to this, Benjamin, which is it all has to happen in a very non-judgmental way. And that's another thing that's important. I do not believe in, oh, honey, that was awesome. No. You will never hear this from me. I will say, okay, I can find something that was very good about it, but let's find what the problem is. Are you happy with it? And that's another thing that's important. The student needs to think about it. I do not tell them everything that they need to fix or everything that has to be addressed. And so little by little, I build the confidence, confidence, self-esteem, another byproduct of knowing, okay, it was not perfect, but I know what was not perfect and how I can fix it.
Now, do these both the idea of thinking in terms of these byproducts and what you're talking about now, do you think they also stem from your own proclivity also for administrative thinking and for entrepreneurship? Do you know what I mean?
I think the entrepreneurship part is true. I really think so. And because I have so many interests in so many different things and I love them. And so I think it must be contagious. I don't do this on purpose, but usually I have a project and I want to do stuff and I always find that there's people that will follow me. I even had a couple of students that have told me that they stuck in cello lessons, not because they necessarily were so interested in the lessons, but because they loved to come to the lessons. And so that's already, I can't, I wish I could say something about how I do this, but I really don't. I think it's 80% who you are, I guess, that probably fits in there, and never try to be someone that you're not. Because the kids know, the younger they are, they can tell, the moment you open your mouth, if you're true or not. And I think this is who I am. This is what I like to do. That I'm here to help. And that's, I think, a great motivator. The entrepreneurial part of it is they know that I will ask them to do a lot of other things, listening to music. One of my former students who I don't know why we started to talk about Piazzolla, for example, Argentine composer who wrote a lot of tango music. And we listened to it. And these days, this former student is an amazing ethnomusicologist who is teaching at a university with his area of expertise, Argentina and the tango. And I know that I had quite a bit to do with this. So that was not my intention and necessarily, but that is what happens when you are true to yourself. You express what your likes and things, and students will take it from there. I don't think that it takes a lot of extra learning. You don't learn this in a university. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good. Now, how did the Crossroads Trio come about? What's the story?
So this was at when we were students still at the university in Madison. So a pianist from Malta and a flutist from New York and this cellist from Argentina. We crossed roads, we crossed paths over there, and we liked all kinds of different styles of music, and that's what we ended up doing. I always say I love to play chamber music so much. And the combination of a flute with cello piano rather than a violin, the more traditional ensemble of violin, cello, piano, it has such a rich component to it. And fortunately and unfortunately, there isn't a lot of music written for this kind of ensemble. And with the entrepreneurial skills and liking of the three of us, actually, we started to find composers, we started to arrange music, we started to find people who would arrange music for us. And so we ended up with a very eclectic mix of crossover, classical / jazz / Latin American, all kinds of things. And it was all wonderful adventures. We were in Malta and we performed in this theater from the 1600s, which was just amazing. And we got to meet the composer of one of the pieces that we played there. Being there was amazing because the sounds from the streets and the crazy traffic and whatnot suddenly made a lot of sense on the music that we were playing.
Nice.
And when I understood it a lot better once that we were there. So it was music that had some sort of ethnic content. Or belonging to a place. And so we played a few Piazzolla, a few, we of course did the more traditional Martinu, flute, cello, piano trio, that this kind of music, but it was very, it was very interesting to do this. The life took us though to very many different places, and so we stopped playing together a little bit ago, although there's a reunion coming for next year. Nice. We are making plans. The flutist is in Rochester, the pianist is in Madison, and I'm here in San Diego, so we'll cross paths again.
Good. Well, that makes a good segue to what are some of the other things on your plate for 2022, performances and projects?
So projects, I have a couple of really interesting projects going on. One of them is a composer that just retired from the Ohio State University and moved to San Diego, Jan Rodzinski. You may have heard this name and you may have met him because he was friends with Professor Vardi at the, and so he played a few pieces that Jan Rodzinski composed for him. So now that he's here in San Diego, I would love to have some of his music being performed. I'm working on a couple of his pieces that I love. Prayer that he wrote that's so beautiful, and that's one thing that I really want to play. But I also want to bring his son to play with a university orchestra, a concerto that Jan just finished writing. And this son of his is the principal violinist of the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra. So that's one big project that I have to get him here and to do master classes. He's also a fabulous teacher, do master classes for our students, so that's a big project that I'm working on these days. I'm also working on continuing to expand the community music school at the university. This is something that I really want to expand it to younger students with possibly Dalcroze or kinder music classes before they get to an instrument. I'm not so inclined to start kids when on an instrument when their motor skills are not developed. I do believe that we want to teach them rhythm and pitch and dancing and feeling the music in their bodies before the whole motor skill that instruments like a cello requires, so those are the big plans for this coming year, hopefully.
Wow, sounds big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, best of luck with all of it.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for sharing this, the stories and the perspective. This has been a real treat. I knew it would be.
Well, it's great to be here.
All right. Well, and in the course of like the Crossroads or any other reason, if the New York and California happen to meet in Wisconsin, you have to let me know. It'd be great to see.
Definitely. You. And it will happen in Madison. It will happen in Madison.
Outstanding. I'll keep my ears open for that. That'd be great.
We'll do. We'll let you know.
All right. Well, thanks again, Carina, and thanks everybody. Happy practicing all weekend, and we'll see you the same time next week. Take care.